So the name of the study we chose for replication was Effects on Homework Completion and Accuracy of Varied and Constant Reinforcement within an Interdependent Group Contingency System. It was published in 2010 in the Journal of Applied School Psychology, and it was by Stephen G. Little, Angelique Akin Little, and Lynn M. Newman Aig. There are several studies, namely Cooper, Robinson, and Patel in 2006, Miller and Kelly in 1991, Trautwein in 2007, and Wahlberg, Pascal, and Weinstein in 1984, that have demonstrated a correlation between increased rates of homework completion and increased academic achievement for students across grade levels. Therefore, effective interventions to promote student completion of homework is of social significance and led us to choose this study. I should introduce the participants of this group. It was myself, Alana, Amy, Courtney, Darren, and Ryan. I'll proceed with the literature review. Various methods have functioned to increase the occurrence of homework completion in students, and although many of these methods have been successful, they've fallen short due to reasons such as cost and difficulty of implementation, as found by Trautwein and Ludke in 2007. So the ideal intervention would be something that was effective as well as practical. That's what we found in this study, Effects on Homework Completion and Accuracy of Varied and Constant Reinforcement within an Interdependent Group Contingency System. In this original study, this was a single participant crossover design with an interdependent group contingency, and it involved one classroom of fourth grade students and two other classrooms that served as experimental groups. So one control group classroom and two experimental group classrooms. In this study, the authors compared the use of both varied and constant reinforcement conditions, and both of these conditions resulted in improvement in homework completion and accuracy. However, the use of constant reinforcement produced a greater boost than varied reinforcement. We chose to use constant reinforcement for that reason, and due to time and group size constraints, our replication focused on using the interdependent group contingency along with constant reinforcement to increase homework completion and accuracy amongst ourselves. We divided ourselves into a control group and an experimental group. As you might remember, we intended on soliciting volunteers from the class to participate with us and be our control group so we could all benefit from the treatment. But since we didn't get volunteers, we divided our group. So each member of our group engaged in the same target behavior of completing homework assignments in this course. And as homework assignments were an integral component for success in this course, successful replication for behavior change provided our group personal and professional benefits. In addition, as future behavior analysts and service providers, knowledge of effective and practical interventions to increase homework completion in students of many different ages by way of similar interdependent group contingencies will be highly applicable. Now I will pass it over to Amy to speak more on the methods and procedures.
Okay, hello. So as Alana was saying, the original study compared varied and constant reinforcement rates between their two classrooms to see which one would have more of an effect on homework completion and accuracy. Both of the treatment classes improved, but the constant reinforcement group improved the most. So like Alana said, with our size and our group constraints, we focused on constant reinforcement. So the original study had 3 classrooms of 4th grade students, and we had our 5 graduate students, as you can see, 3 females and 2 males. And we random assigned a control group, which ended up being myself and Darren. The original study, homework completion was turning in a math assignment worksheet with at least 1/3 of the math problems completed. And then homework accuracy was defined Of those students who completed their assignment, what percent of those problems were correct? Those were their dependent variables, homework completion and homework accuracy. Ours were similar. Our dependent variable for homework completion was students completing 1/5 of assigned readings from our Cooper textbook Monday to Friday, and to take assigned quizzes by Saturday. And homework accuracy was our first attempt quiz score from our Cooper quizzes on the website. We also examined our exam scores as just a quick, easy way to examine our percent to see if we were improving over the course of the semester. In the original study, the independent variables were 2 times a week. So on Wednesdays and Fridays, they had opportunities to earn free time if the 2-day average of homework completion and accuracy was greater or equal to either their baseline or the previous measurement period. So after baseline data was collected, if they improved that first week, if they kept improving, they got their free time. And then they had the constant and the varied conditions. So the constant condition was that they had 10 minutes of extra free time at the end of the class that day. And then the varied condition was they put slips of paper into a bowl, and they had it averaged 10, from anywhere from like 4 minutes to 12 minutes of free time, depending on what they drew out. But then, yes. So our independent variable was the opportunity to receive free time on Sunday if our homework was completed and our accuracy improved. So baseline data was collected for 3 weeks. That corresponded with modules 7 and 9. We did screenshots of our first attempt quiz scores, which is also how we collected our IOA data, by just making sure that we were grading appropriately. And quiz scores during baseline were to be sent by the end of the week by Sundays at 11:59. Homework completion baseline was collected individually so as not to affect one another when we started our treatment. And so we were supposed to be keeping track of how much of the chapter we were reading Monday to Friday. And yeah, like I said, each group member was trusted to collect their own percent of chapters read. So that was what took place during baseline. During our intervention, once our intervention was in place, homework completion for the experimental group was to read 20% of the assigned readings Monday to Friday. So they were supposed to divide the chapters, read 20% a day, and check in with each other, because in the original study, there was check-ins from the teacher. The teacher was giving the students feedback, like good job on completing your homework, that kind of thing. So we were supposed to check in with each other to provide that feedback, to say, hey, look, I finished mine. Did you guys finish yours? So we did that. So we checked in daily with email after things were read. Control group members didn't have any requirements for completing readings at any scheduled time. We were just tracking when we were reading our assignments. And then homework accuracy in the form of first attempts quiz scores. For the experimental group, they were supposed to be turned in by Saturday after finishing 100% of the assigned readings. So the control group was to submit their first attempt quiz scores any point in the week whenever you completed it. So free time on Sunday was contingent on all experimental group members checking in daily with their homework completion of 20% of their readings, and group percent of homework accuracy increasing. So it's an interdependent group contingency, because we had to average our scores together. Your group score had to get better. So homework accuracy needed to be even or better than the week before. If a group member failed to check in or failed to complete daily readings, or homework accuracy did not improve, the group was to schedule a hangout for the weekend, because we lost access to our Sunday free time. And during the Sunday free time hangout, if we lost our free time, we were supposed to discuss what we had read that week in the chapters, what we talked about. So that is how our intervention worked. And I am going to pass it off to Ryan for results. And I also have IOA data. So when we get to IOA, I have that to screen share with you guys as well. All right, Ryan.
Hi, my name's Ryan, and I'll discuss the results section of our study. The study conducted resulted in a few significant findings. The first was looking at homework completion for the treatment group. First, the treatment group was to read 20% of the daily readings for the week. Once that was completed, the treatment group reported to the rest of the group on a daily basis. At the end of the week, if all homework was completed, this resulted in a free day on Sunday, as Amy had talked about. The first week of treatment resulted in 70% of the treatment group completing homework before Sunday, so 2 of the 3 students completed that. This resulted in there not being a free day on the Sunday for the rest of that group. The following 3 weeks of treatment saw 100% homework completion, resulting in the treatment group receiving a free day on those particular Sundays. It can be hypothesized that that first week not receiving a free day resulted in the group finishing their daily readings and quizzes on time for the remaining weeks. Also, for the study, IOA data was taken for both the treatment group and control group. Each group contained a primary observer and secondary observer, with total count IOA being conducted. IOA data was taken for both the treatment group and control group was 100%. It can be determined that the study using group contingencies resulted in students in the treatment group being increasingly motivated to complete homework on time to obtain their free day, and it showed that the accuracy on the quizzes and exams increased. I want to share a comparison between the control group and the treatment group on how our group averages were for quizzes and exams. So I'm going to pull that up right now. For baseline week 7, the experimental group, the group average for our quizzes was 81% compared to the control group, where week 7 was an average of 55% on the quizzes. Looking at week 8 quizzes, the experimental group's average was 81%, and the control group's average was 54%. Our last week of baseline for quizzes was week 9, and our group average for the experimental group was 93%. And for the control group, it was 61%. For the exams, week 2, for exam 1, the group average for the experimental group was 78%, as compared to 86% for the control group on that first exam. The second exam for the experimental group, the average was 80%, and for the control group, the average was 71% on that second exam. For the third exam, the experimental group's group average for the exam was 74%, and for the control group, the average was 83%. So moving forward, once intervention started in week 10, you'll see that the experimental group, the average for the quizzes that week was 80%, as compared to 63% for the control group. In week 11, the average on quizzes for the experimental group was 90%, as compared to 75% for the control group. Week 12's averages for the quizzes for the experimental group was 95%, as compared to 77% for the control group. And week 13, the average on the quizzes for the experimental group was 91%, compared to 79% for the control group on that specific week. And the exam 4 that happened during the intervention phase for the experimental group, the average was 80% compared to 81% that the control group had.
Ryan, do you have our graph, or do you want me to pull that up?
I believe I do have that graph.
Okay, because that will show, I can screen share that as well. I have it right here.
All right, let me just check, see if I have it.
Because that's it.
Amy, it's not on there.
Okay, here, I got it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. I believe it's this one. So the top is, comparing the treatment group to the control group. We lost our free time.
Ryan, could you mute your microphone, please? It's just echo.
Oh.
Sorry, Amy.
No, it's okay. So you can tell, so we lost our free time that first week when we started our treatment because our scores went down from baseline. And we should have, we lost our free time this last week too. We've been meeting a lot. So because our scores went down, treatment scores went down the final week. But as you can tell, the control group on quizzes, we steady average, but so top is treatment group, bottom is comparison of control, exams versus quiz scores. So did improve for the most part. Again, since these are group averages and our groups were so small, lots of variability between, if one person scores really well and, there can be a lot of variability between just having a 2 or 3 people group, which we'll discuss in our discussion. But there's our graph.
And you have individual graphs?
We do. We will share. We have our individual graphs as well. We were going to share those. Do you want us to share those now?
Oh no! If you have a plan, then that's perfect. I'll follow your plan.
Okay. All right, Ryan. Anything else to add?
I'm good.
So I'm Darren, and I did the discussion part of the section. So the study we replicated looked to answer multiple questions. The first one was to provide support as to the effectiveness of group contingencies as an effective intervention for behavior modification in a classroom environment. While our replication of the study wasn't conducted in a typical classroom environment, it was based off of homework completion and quiz and exam scores and implemented in a web-based classroom, showing how the intervention can be modified to fit the needs of the teacher. The second question the study looked to address was providing an intervention strategy that was cost-effective and easy to implement. Through our experience in replicating the study, it was shown to be very cost-effective and in fact didn't cost anything to implement since the reinforcement was a day off from homework. When implementing this in a classroom setting, the only cost associated with the intervention would be training the staff on how to tailor the intervention to fit their specific classroom needs. The intervention was also easy to implement in our group, being that there were only 5 members. One thing to consider when using group contingencies in the classroom environment is the impact it could have on class morale, being that the group might not receive the reinforcement due to one student. This could lead to problems with students being responsible for the group not receiving the reinforcement, being picked on or bullied, and create tension between students who consistently complete the homework and those who do not. While we didn't experience any of this in our replication, precautions should be taken to ensure it doesn't occur in a typical classroom. I'm going to pass it on to Courtney to let her finish up the discussion.
All right. Hi, I will be discussing the limitations, considerations, and also what future research may want to evaluate and what they may want to do differently to get a better understanding. First of all, there were only a total of 5 participants, as we've been talking about. This can limit the reliability of the study. Secondly, the variability of the homework was a potential confounding factor to the study. Consistent of 2 chapters each week to read, with the exception of 1 week where there was only 1 chapter to be read, but the chapters were not consistent of how long they were. Some chapters were much longer than others, and vice versa, some were much shorter. Were not examined or controlled for this study. The length may have affected students' motivation to complete their homework each day. This could have also affected student accuracy on the quizzes, because if there was more information to retain, it may have been harder quizzes than the ones that covered shorter amount of content. Also, the amount of time in between exams and the amount of content from 4 chapters to 6 chapters, and the amount of time was consistent of 2 weeks of a 3-week. If it was an exam with 6 chapters, it may have been more difficult than exams with only 2 chapters. And like I said before, some of the chapters were much longer or shorter than another. So if there's more content, it could have been more difficult to perform higher on those quizzes and exams. Homework assignments were only controlled and examined for this course, 611. Students may or may not have had other classes that they participated in. This may have had an effect because if we had homework in other classrooms and we all earned free time on Sunday, we may have still had to do homework on Sunday due to our other classes. And in the future, a possible way to avoid this would be to, I'll talk about that in a little bit, sorry. This is possible that this affected the motivation of students to complete homework by criteria because other classes that would not allow them to have all day Sunday for free time. There are a lot of possibilities for future research in the area of classroom contingency systems. One of those possibilities being examine more of the use of constant reinforcer and randomized rules. Another area of interest may be to examine the interaction between the ability level and reinforcement schedules. Both of these would further the understanding of the efficacy of these interventions. Future research or studies may want to control the variability of homework, the amount that is given in between each exam and quiz. Difficult to do with it being a college course and not having control over what is assigned by the professors. To look at the course syllabuses and see if there's consistency throughout the course and choose a course that has that component. As it was mentioned before, free time was given to the control group if they met the criteria of finishing 20% of homework in the 611 class Monday through Friday and completing the quizzes by Sunday or by Saturday. This did not necessarily mean that the student did not have any other homework from other courses that they needed to complete. It may be a good idea to get students who are taking the exact same courses to get rid of this confounding factor in the future. Also, they may want to focus on examining generalization of these results, the course 611 homework. It is not clear if this type of group contingency would be effective for increasing homework completion and accuracy rates for other courses at Ball State University. Lastly, studies may want to have a larger sample size in both the control and treatment group. This will make the data more reliable and give more value to the study. We have discussed everything, and we would like to go over our individual graphs to give more. We'll start with Elena.
Elena, do you have our group homework completion graph as well available? I can pull it up from our report if needed. Okay, oh, there's Alana. There she's
There,
got.
okay, about that. So this was my individual graph for homework completion. We basically scored a 0 or 100%, depending on whether we read 1/5 of the text reading per day. So if we read 1/5 of the reading per day, that would essentially equal having read 100% of the material for that day. So if you notice in the graph, during baseline, I wasn't reading 1/5 of the textbook readings per day. So I got even some on each of those days. It wasn't the 1/5. So I scored a 0 for each of the days in baseline for my daily reading completion. And then for treatment, I did read 1/5 of the reading each day. So that's why I have a steady score of 100% throughout treatment. This is my individual graph on accuracy of exams and quizzes. So this is percent correct of quizzes and exams. And if you notice in baseline, my exams and quizzes seem to be steadily rising. Then in the treatment phase, my last exam didn't continue rising in the same way that it was in baseline, but it didn't drop too much farther. This did increase, so I did improve my scores in this. It would have been interesting to see. Oh, I see that Dr. Margot just was dropped from the call, but I'll continue for the sake of the recording. In the treatment phase, the quiz scores did increase, but exam scores Hi, Dr. Margot.
Out. Hi. Sorry, I don't know what happened. It just dropped.
It's okay. So I was showing you my individual graph on the quizzes and exams, and I was my exam scores not. I was thinking it would be interesting to see how I would have done, you know, had I graphed the to see whether upward. And now I'll pass it over to Amy for her individual graphs.
So first, I'm going to screen share over here. These are our IOA tables. I know there's a lot. Hold on, let me make it bigger. There's a lot of information, but it was pretty easy. We basically just had to make sure that our primary and our secondary observers, were we doing our math right? Are we getting the same group average? Because we were using screenshots of our scores. So it was really just to make sure that everybody was doing their own math correctly to get the 100%, to get the group score. So Alana and I scored the control group, and Ryan and Darren scored the treatment group, and we had 100% across the board. We did not have a checklist for treatment fidelity, so that was our mistake. However, we were checking in with each other daily with our emails to give feedback and to say, hey, are you guys doing your reading? So the treatment group did do that. We were all on those emails, so we were communicating constantly throughout the course of this assignment. I was really lucky to be in the control group because I do my homework on the weekends. And so here's my homework completion for Monday to Friday. I do not read during the week most of the time. So that was pretty easy. I was 0% across the board for doing readings Monday through Friday. But then here's my individual homework accuracy.
Hey, Amy, your
yeah.
graph isn't showing, just so you know. It's
It's
still
not?
on the IOA.
Oh, okay, hold on. How about, okay, well, now? Okay, so there's my zeros because I do my reading, I do my homework on the weekends. And here's my homework accuracy graph. Are you seeing it? So I was in the control group. If we cut it at week 9, I mean, my quizzes did steadily rise. My, hold on, I'm gonna go back to me. My quiz averages were like overall for every quiz, was 80% and across the board. And then my exam scores were around 90. But so there's my individual graphs. So I did improve on quiz scores when treatment was in effect, but I was in the control group, so I was a comparison. And I will pass it off to Ryan.
All right, I'm going to pull mine up right now. I was in the treatment group, so the bottom graph you'll see is the homework completion. As Elena said, during baseline, we weren't scoring, so what you'll see is zeros during baseline. And once treatment began in week 10, I did my reading Monday through Friday every single day, thus seeing, well, you'll see the 100% throughout the remaining days. And going up top to this, the exam and quiz accuracy, my exam scores started out at a high rate during baseline, starting on at 90%. And actually decreased going down, which is kind of a bummer, and ends up at 70% for the third and fourth exam. But looking at my quiz scores, I did see a steady increase after treatment was presented until the very last one when I saw it dip back down to 86%. And that is my individual graph. And I'll move on to Darren.
Let me pull mine up real quick. Oh, that's not working, is it? Can everyone see it? So for the homework accuracy, I excel and the quiz file, there's really no correlation that I can, in my Monday through Friday, sort of like it that I don't do through the week. It's during the on the graph. Share hers now.
All right, so here's my homework completion graph. As you can see in baseline, I wasn't reading 20% each day. And then in treatment, there was 2 days in the first week that I did not get around to the 1/5 the reading. That's why we did not earn our free time the first week, was because of me. So I'm sorry, guys. For my accuracy on exams and quizzes, exams, I was doing very poorly during baseline, and I don't know if this was due to summer and I was living out of a van. And so there's my scores, and then after treatment, I don't know, I was in a place and I was also doing my readings. So I don't know if that helped my exams and my quizzes. So I don't know if it was due to my living situation or the treatment. It's probably both. But on my graph, and that is everything. Do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, so I wanted to just sort of understand design for study. So did you do AB because you, or what was the design of the original study?
The original study did, they did an ABC design because they compared their baseline to a constant reinforcement condition and then followed by a varied reinforcement condition. And with our time constraints and our group constraints, we did our baseline and then a constant condition. We didn't know how we would be able to do a varied reinforcement of time with us being in different locations. So we decided that our constant reinforcement was just our free time on Sundays. So they didn't go back to baseline in the original study. They did an ABC design and compared the three. And in the constant condition is when the most improvements were made. Improvements were made in varied as well. But for both accuracy and completion, it was the constant condition that saw the most significant change.
Got it. And then so, you know, the reactivity bias, how do you explain that? Because even for the control group, you were, you know, you were measuring your own data, and you also knew what the study entails. Do you think for the control group, and even for the treatment group, that it played a role in the results that you got?
I know for me personally, because I do my readings for my quizzes. I mean, for my exams and all of that. I actually did try to do my quizzes before the reading to not affect my scores, so that my scores wouldn't be super high because I was the control group. So I know that that would have been good data to have, I think, of comparison of like when the readings were completed to when, like for the control group, when we actually took our quizzes. But I know that I was taking my quizzes randomly during the middle of the week, and then I do my readings on the weekend. But I was doing that intentionally to try to not get as high of scores. So
Yeah, and I
And
was
you
the
didn't
same as
have-
Amy.
Go ahead,
I did
Darren.
mine the same way as far as taking the quizzes randomly through the week, and sometimes I'd read before, sometimes after. It just depended. I mean, since there was no real regulations to it.
Right. And then, but you didn't have to do that reading. It was not part of you didn't have to do anything. I mean, you had to read because this is also part of your coursework, but you didn't have to read anything at all, like the 1/5 piece. So what I'm interested in terms of your data is the percentage of chapters read. Do you have information on how much, did you all finish all 100%, even in baseline too, or no? Courtney can't hear you.
Sorry, I was still muted. So in baseline, yeah, we didn't keep track of how much we read. For me, I always read on Saturdays or Sundays, or even the following week to catch up if I fell behind the previous week. But once treatment started, I would divide up the pages and then write up on my planner how many pages I had to read per day, and then check it off each day.
Okay, cool. Do you have any questions for me? If not, we can like stop recording and then just touch base off air.